webinar. My name is Chris Sternberg, and I'm the Managing Director of Oil here at Genscape. I'm joined today by Adam Kovac, who is our Director of Oil Content and Analysis, and Jason Fuchs, our Product Development Engineer. Today's program will provide a quick overview of Genscape, a snapshot on the Genscape DigitalGlobe report, and then Adam will jump in for the main session on the full details of our current analysis of Eagle Ford. All the slides will be sent out to you later this week, so you don't have to keep hitting print screen or taking photos with your iPhone. We'll get them out to you as quickly as possible, and we'll provide a link for playback as well. The content presented is based on insights from our existing products in North American oil storage, transportation, and refining, plus details from last week's monthly publication of the new Genscape DigitalGlobe Energy Infrastructure Report focusing on Eagle Ford. We encourage you to jot down any questions you may have as we will open up the line for Q&A station, or please type them into the text box on your screen during the presentation, and we'll read them out for you. Moving on to the next slide, many of you may already be familiar with Genscape, but for those of you that not, I will provide you with two things. First, a quick overview now, and second, for those that want more detail, we'll provide you with additional slides on the deck we send out so that you can have some more time to look at what's going on in Eagle Ford today, which is, of course, our main topic. Since 2001, Genscape is providing energy markets with key operational data using a series of patented monitoring technologies to generate data streams and analysis that help the industry find trading opportunities or reduce operational risk. Generally speaking, if you look at our monitoring capabilities, they fall under 5 broad categories. These categories are basically looking at different types of technologies that we've patented and help us create the data streams necessary. For today's presentation, we'll be using data from our EMF monitors on power consumption of pipelines, aerial and satellite photography for storage and infrastructure development, plus the analysis provided by our entire oil analyst team to look at the impacts on supply-demand balances of the energy supply chain. I encourage you to visit our website or contact our sales group for more details or to arrange a demo for areas of interest. Well, a little bit about our relationship with DigitalGlobe, I'd like to point out. Now, we would love to send out a few rockets up with out with the Genscape satellite, but I don't think I'll be able to get that into the budget anytime soon. There is a tremendous amount of change in the physical infrastructure, not only in Eagle Ford, but around the world. We want to give our subscribers details on every project, but the geography makes that time-consuming and costly. That's why Genscape has teamed up with DigitalGlobe, a leading provider of satellite imagery, to target their birds to key energy infrastructure and let our team of analysts review the images to provide you with the key insights to those changes. Our first joint product is a monthly subscription to Eagle Ford infrastructure. I encourage you after this webinar to sign up if you haven't for a trial and join many of your colleagues who have already seen the first couple of issues and know a lot of what we're about to present today. And there's no reason to be caught off guard with a report like this available, so I encourage you to sign up. Now on to the main event. I would like to introduce Adam Kovac, who just joined us in July and has already proven to be a key member of our oil analyst team. Adam, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Chris, and welcome everyone to Genscape's Eagle Ford webinar session this afternoon. I realize it's been a busy afternoon, especially with the last 5 to 10 minutes of trading and crude oil dropping like a rock all of a sudden. But we'll get through this in due time, and hopefully it will be as educational and informative as it has been on our end. Next slide, this is just a brief schematic we did internally here of what the infrastructure in Eagle Ford looks like. It's very messy, not too organized, and there's a lot to go through, but as you can see, the build-out and the announced build-out is quite excessive. So we'll review that, what we've been seeing recently on the ground as far as overhead with satellite imagery or flybys, and then we'll also discuss the impact of this on refinery demand, PAD 3 movements, and I guess a bigger picture macro analysis, if you will. Moving on to slide 7, we're going to start off with storage here. Most recently, Seaway along the Enterprise line on its way to Rancho, 1.2 million barrels of construction appear to be nearing completion, and this is important. Most of the bigger tanks are undergoing hydro testing or are close to finishing hydro testing. And the impact here is, while the amount of production that can move from the Eagle Ford over to the Houston area, Rancho, et cetera, is limited at this time, these tanks should provide some backstop to slow down any flow headed towards the crossover with Seaway at the intersection. Magellan, East Houston, this is where the offtake from the pipeline reversal is, and right now what we have seen most recently is approximately 6 new 250,000 barrel tanks. They're 15% complete, and given what we are seeing on the ground and what we have discussed internally here, we believe these to be slightly behind schedule and approximately 250 days away from completion, with an expected completion date of roughly May 2013, just putting it slightly behind schedule. Now on slide 8, the echo terminals, and some of this may be repetitive due to what we've released in our report, but some of it is new as well. The 3 storage terminals, which are approximately 250,000 barrels apiece, are completed, obviously. But to the left, we have started to see most recently some more clearing. If you take a close look to the bottom left, you see a lot of backhoe activity. And actually, the design of the clearing is very similar to that of the 3 tanks on the top, okay? And there are 2 clearings, and this would indicate to us that we believe this is where the 2 400,000 barrel tanks are going to go. And we definitely see the necessity for more storage built out, especially if Seaway is going to flow 400, if Eagle Ford shale starts to fill up on the Enterprise line, which is 350,000 barrels per day of capacity, moving towards Houston. If this is truly to be a delivery point for any Gulf or CME Gulf Coast WTI contract, it needs to build up a lot more. From there, you can deliver to the Houston refining, Texas City, Beaumont, Port Arthur, et cetera, and then even perhaps push it on further to St. Charles, Louisiana, with the Ho-Ho reversal and some other pipelines that have been announced or are going to be built out. Slide number 6, I believe, or 9 here. Oil tanking phase 2. This is something we got a brief glimpse of on our most recent flyover. Right now, it's phase 1 is adding 1.1 million barrels of new crude storage. Phase 3.2 million. But the key here is they can add another 3 million if they decide to. But right now, if you take a look to the left, you can definitely see some clearing going on, crop circles, if you will. Definitely some more activity construction-wise on the ground, and we have seen some stacks of pipes being built out as well. So phase 2 appears to be moderately underway as expected. Moving on to pipes, Enterprise's Houston interconnects. We cannot shot to this in our most recent flight, but this is necessary for oil to flow from Eagle Ford or Seaway, additional volumes to Houston. And this is supposed to be completed by the end of Q3 2012. Enterprise has yet to indicate that this portion of its project is complete. Slide 10, moving on to Seaway, and we're not going to focus too much on this. We understand its importance and the impact it could have eventually on flows from the Eagle Ford towards Houston. Most recently, we did a flyover on Cushing. The pump station there seems to be some construction ongoing, but after some internal discussion, it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem significant. It's not centered around the pump stations or anything. It appears to be more the cosmetic kind, if you will. But should we see anything else, we will definitely pass that information on. regardless, Enterprise needs to upgrade the pumps here to move to 400,000 barrels per day. And all the inline work that we're seeing, such as at the Seaway Colbert pump station down on the bottom left of your screen, all the work appears to be complete. The ground's been sealed, and we have seen no further indication of additional construction at any of the inline stations. So things as far as the Seaway pipeline itself appear to be on time. The question is, from a takeaway standpoint, obviously on everyone's mind, are there any bottlenecks or constraints there? Most recently on Friday afternoon, or rather Friday evening, we released a statement on Seaway and Jones Creek. We discovered a request for pipeline easement from the TPWD on Friday, and the link is attached there. Obviously, you need a permit, so I called the RRC of Texas, and we got them to upload a permit for the Seaway Twinning Loop project that had not been previously available. So it details 36-inch, 57 to 60-mile pipeline from Jones Creek to Echo. So given some logic here, it's obvious that, in July 1, 2013, according to the permit, this lateral is not necessary for Seaway to flow 400,000 barrels per day. It indicates that it has other areas. It can go via Rancho on to Houston. It can go, perhaps, we're looking more into this, but the DOE line from Freeport on, maybe some small amounts of takeaway towards the Phillips 66, I want to say Sweeney Refinery down there in southern Texas. But we do not believe it is necessary anymore to flow 400,000 barrels per day. The rail build-out has not been as massive or well-pronounced, if you will, as what's been going on. USDG's Garden Rail has 40,000 barrels per day takeaway capacity, and they're looking to expand to, in Phase 2 and Phase 3. EOG has 20,000 barrels per day takeaway capacity, same change. But recent statements indicate that they've reallocated a lot of these tank cars north to the Bakken Shale to address shortages of tank cars and takeaway from there as more build-outs and announcements get announced east and westbound. And we'll discuss the implications of Eagle Ford on Bakken in a later slide. Slide 13, marine terminals. There have been several build-outs to that extent there. We were looking at two in particular recently. Martin Midstream's 4 100,000 barrel tanks look like they're complete. Another 3 are in some stage of construction, and the belief is, according to the permit, that barge loading rates can go up to 240,000 barrels per day out of that area. Trafigura is also building out their docks at Corpus Christi as well. 3 80,000 barrel tanks and 3 50,000 barrel tanks appear to be online, but we have yet to see the expansion phase 2 of 2 million barrels to bring total storage to 2 million barrels started yet. Now, obviously, given all those build-outs, given what we are seeing on the ground, the question is on everyone's mind is, what are the implications, the impact of this? What does this mean for refiner demand in the region, light heavy differentials, further infrastructure build-outs and expansions? How is the oil going to flow? Where is it going to go? Are there going to be excesses, etc.? So slide 15, this is just a larger balance, if you will, of total infrastructure assets, inbound and outbound pipes, their expected times to come online, the associated characteristics with them, rail, and what we've interpolated as production levels from 2012 to 2015, utilizing the various forecasts of 1.3 to 1.6 million barrels per day. And what we perceive as refining demand that could take away from Eagle Ford. Right now, we know of 5 refineries that are utilizing Eagle Ford shale crude oil and condensate, but we believe the ones that are bolded and italicized and have the 2 stars beside them on the top are ones, given their configuration, their complexity, that they have the capability to take on Eagle Ford crude oil. Now, there's some logistical issues with getting this to them, but once the pipelines are built, particularly with New Mexico and El Paso, there needs to be something, perhaps, I have not seen anything yet, but some sort of takeaway sending crude oil in their direction, because we think it would be beneficial to increase takeaway from Eagle Ford for those particular refiners. So moving on to slide 16, this is what Valero Three Rivers looks like. Right now, we are estimating 60,000 barrels per day they're using for Eagle Ford crude oil. But as you can see, there's a massive amount of crude oil pipelines going in and out of Three Rivers. I would caution that Enterprise's PAA joint venture that was recently announced has a takeaway of 350,000 barrels per day. But if that is flowing, then the maximum that can, then you can't have 300,000 barrels per day of PAA moving down towards Corpus Christi. But we would also mention that given the current production levels, given the current refinery takeaway in the region, maximum, we feel that 50 to 150,000 barrels per day is a reasonable number that could be flowing on the new Enterprise or newly opened Enterprise line towards Houston. Slide 17, Corpus Christi itself, with approximately 70,000 barrels per day of capacity. These are the numbers that we most recently saw as far as Eagle Ford consumption. Corpus Christi, 115,000 barrels per day. However, someone notified me earlier that it may be larger than that due to a most recent investor call. It's roughly 140,000 barrels per day, which would effectively reduce the volumes that could be going up the Enterprise line once it opens. So Valero, 42, Citgo, 15, and some additional pipelines coming from Koch and a smaller New Star from PETAS. So moving on to slide 18, looking a little more broader, with broader strokes at refining demand in the Gulf Coast PADD 3 region. This is essentially a bubble map of capacity in the region, okay? And you can see that most of the capacity is definitely west towards the Houston, Port Arthur, Nederland, St. Charles, and even as far as Louisiana. There's very little capacity the further north, northwest you go towards New Mexico, central, and northern Texas. But right now, this is where we see the flows going. We do believe that there's some barge takeaway here, but again, a limiting factor that we do want to mention is as far as potential takeaway with barges is obviously the Jones Act. You can only move oil from port to port under a Jones Act ship, so there's definitely some constraints there as well. Perhaps some further debottlenecking to go. Takes about 3 to 4 years to build a Jones Act ship, so that would take some time. But moving on to the next slide, just another graphic, if you will, on complexity. And this is probably the bigger issue with Eagle Ford shale crude oil demand. We definitely, I mean, Gulf Coast is probably one of the most complex, it is the most complex region in the U.S., has the most, and when I say complex, its abilities to take heavier sour, medium sour crude oils and process them into high-end refined products, middle distillates, gasoline, etc. And you can see complexity varies greatly. The smaller, the more smaller ones are seen as simple, medium, and then you have medium complexity in the blue, and then very complex white circles. And These are relative. These are very proportional to their actual complexity index. So the oil, yeah, we may get to 1.3 to 1.6 million barrels per day of production, but the question is who is going to use it here, and if there's any excess, where is it going to go? Final bubble chart here. Bottom of the barrel index, again, a refinery's ability to process the heavier ends, vacuum gas oil, heavy vacuum gas oil into lighter ends. And that's simply, as we go on to the next slide, the total delayed and fluid coking, cat cracking, cat hydrocracking, divided by total distillation capacity. And Gulf Coast is definitely the highest here in the country and highest relative to the rest of the world, I believe, 60% almost, while PAD 2 has roughly 50% is a bottom of the barrel index. So what does this mean, and why are we talking so much about the play of light sweet versus heavy sour? Well, I'm not going to go through this entire list, but PAD 2 and PAD 3 refinery upgrades over the last couple of years, some of them complete, some not. You can see the general trend, though. It's been towards processing end. This was before the shale plays started hitting everyone out of left field. Okay, and you can see the imports by crude oil, by API gravity, has definitely gone towards the heavy, medium, sour end as opposed to the light end. What is this doing? Well, if you look from 2011 onwards, minus the blip with mixed sweet Canadian, the light heavy crude oil differentials appear to be under some pressure and continue to be under some pressure, and it's continuing to trend down. So this definitely leaves the door open for some other plays, investments in capacity that we'll discuss, certain types of capacity. Slide 23. Gulf Coast production, as everyone is well aware, is surging back to 1980s levels, led by Texas. And it's effectively displaced some of those waterborne light sweet crude oils that we see from West Africa. And to a marginal degree, the thought process is that it's perhaps offsetting some of the decreased North Sea's 40s production, some of those lost Iranian barrels. On the market, helping steady that to a marginal degree. I would say marginal. How does this affect the inflows from the Bakken shale? Well, again, this is very short-term adverse, we feel, especially with the spread. The spread's coming in so much. We don't think that there will be much more proposals to build out infrastructure capacity to send barrels to the Gulf Coast. Okay. Takeaway capacity, for lack of a better word, in the Wilson Basin has exceeded production finally, and price differentials have rallied tremendously. It's becoming less and less economic to move manifest barrels to St. James and the rest of the Gulf Coast. Again, in this slide 24, this just highlights that dynamic, how there are less and less refinery receipts of foreign crude oil being led by the tanker end, while we're seeing increased pipeline flows into the region, and we will continue to likely see this dynamic, or this convergence, if you will, between foreign and domestic receipts, especially as other pipelines open up and increased shale production offsets waterborne imports. So in conclusion, there are various constraints with Eagle Ford. We're limited light sweet demand given the complexity creep. Local refining demand should absorb most of the production in our, based on our belief, but to a degree. So if there's any excess, how will it move? Again, plenty of barge dock capacity, limited Jones Act ships. Seaway going to 400,000 barrels per day. Where does it all go? Well, we need to open up those west to east pipelines. A lot of open seasons announced recently. Excuse me, results of open seas. Is it possible that Eagle Ford could go on the Explorer to Enbridge's Southern Lights as a diluent? Magellan explored this in their permit for the Longhorn reversal a couple years ago. It's actually on the very last page, if I recall correctly. What are the potential solutions here that we will see? Well, more pipelines are being announced, obviously, from west to east, and some refiners have recently actually announced expansions to consume more light sweet crude oil. The Dolphin acquisitions highlight this. These are refineries, small refineries that are primarily focused on producing middle distillates, jet fuel. I think they're 10, 15,000, maybe 20,000 barrels per day in capacity. They have been decommissioned for a number of years, I think from 1993 or even earlier than that, and they're being brought back online. Flint Hills recently announced that their Corpus Christi refinery, that they were going to change some things around on a configuration basis to increase their take of Eagle Ford crude oil. And this definitely benefits anyone that can take advantage of these differentials, especially there's this emissions incentive. We all know the benefits of consuming or producing diesel relative to gasoline. There's definitely better margin. There's and you get more bang for your buck from not only an emissions standpoint but energy as well. So this definitely addresses potential increases in future distillate demand due to policy changes or moves to reduce emissions. But with that in mind, I believe that is the end of our presentation. I will now turn it over to Q&A.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, all. David Frank Kerr here. I'm the CMO with Genscape, and we're going to kick off the question and answer session. We've got a few questions that did come in. Before we get to that, I'd like to encourage anyone, if you have a question at all, please don't hesitate to submit it in the chat window on your screen. And with that, the very first question is, what will the rail loading capacity be at Gardendale after the expansions, and when are they expected to be complete?
Oh, that's No, that's an excellent question. I'm just thinking about it. I'm trying to jog my memory here. I believe they're supposed to double capacity if they go all the way through phase 3, but I have it in the back of my head. I had to research. I have to pull it up. I don't want to spit out anything incorrect. But I do have a number, and if the person would kindly like to send in their contact information, I'll gladly get that to them.
Okay, that's noted. We have the contact info here, so we'll send that off to the person who asked the question. The next question is, what monitoring does Genscape intend to do in order to provide up-to-date changes in oil flows?
Okay, it's a very broad question, but yes, we are really heavily looking at projects right now in the Gulf Coast. We have several proposals in the works. Definitely, we want to monitor some of the pipelines coming out of the Eagle Ford, and we're heavily looking at Houston and Nederland in particular, given the amount of takeaway capacity that's going to be moving in that direction from various regions. And I know we are looking at building out or completing the Bakken product more so. So those are some of the things we are looking at: pipeline, storage, rail, any refineries we may be missing at the moment.
Okay, and third and final question, what other analysis is Genscape doing, aside from the primary satellite imagery, to collect data and understand how a project is progressing?
Well, we have been recording a lot of tank data recently on the construction end, seeing how long it takes from each point in construction to progress to the next stage. and we are using that to help better forecast when we expect tanks to come online. And we're doing that on a company-by-company basis, actually. And we've accumulated a bit of data in the Cushing region, or the Cushing hub, rather. We are looking at doing the same for rail and pipe, I believe, as well. Just collecting the data internally and then trying to use that to better forecast projects.
Okay, and we do have another question coming in. Just again, anyone who has a question, please don't hesitate, send it in. And Adam, you were also doing some permitting analysis, is that correct? You're tracking permits and construction permits and that sort of thing?
Yes, we do look at permits extensively because in order to better assess which infrastructure build-outs to go after and monitor, we feel this is a necessary step, but this is something we actively do day in, day out as far as researching permits.
Okay. Another question is, you thought that the ECHO connection would not be necessary to allow the Seaway expansion to go ahead. How much capacity is available on Rancho et al. To easily allow extension into the Houston refinery complex? Okay,
someone had previously brought up the question whether it was 425 or 350,000 barrels per day. According to the information and documents that we have and the diameter of the pipe, we believe it to be 350,000 barrels per day. So given the maximum that we believe could be flowing from the Eagle Ford towards that region right now, we wouldn't put it more than 50 to tops 150,000 barrels per day, and that leaves what, roughly 200 to 300,000 barrels per day of capacity available on the Rancho. So I think that's the answer.
Okay, thank you. Well, at this point, that concludes all the questions that we have. We'd like to thank you for attending, and again, we will follow up with a link for the entire recorded presentation that you can have the slides and listen to the event on demand. Thank you for attending. Have a great day.